Welcome to the next episode of A Journey Through Cinema. And for today, we are going to cover the year of 1916. Now, this is going to be a slowdown from my first episode where we covered the advent of film from 1878 all the way back to 1915. You can find that in the link below, or you can find it linked at the end of this video. This show, from here on out, it's going to concentrate more on film for each given year. We will look at major awards of the years and nominations and winners in major categories. This is, of course, once they're actually created. We are still a ways out from the first Academy Awards. For now, we will include some of the most popular and highest grossing films of the year and conclude with my top 5 to 10 film picks. This is going to be shorter for now. We're still in the very early years of cinema, and I can kind of afford to be a bit more picky. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's begin this year in 1916, when actors Mary Pickford and Charlie Chaplin each signed a contract for $10,000 a week, making them both among the highest paid people in the US for the time, and arguably the first true movie superstars. June 6 saw the release of a film that time forgot, the sequel to Birth of a Nation. Thomas Dixon Jr., professional racist, screenwriter for Birth of a Nation, and author of the original novel, tried his hand at directing an ill-fated project called Fall of a Nation. This film was based on his own follow-up novel. Fall of a Nation is often considered the first ever sequel to a feature film, but it's kind of more of a spiritual successor than anything else that plays on the themes from Birth of a Nation and tries to profit off the name recognition. The movie tells of a European confederacy led by Germany that invades a demilitarized America and rules over them tyrannically until the citizens again pick up their arms and fight for freedom. So it's basically 1916 Red Dawn. The movie itself was Thomas Dixon Jr.'s only directorial effort and would be a major financial flop. This would bankrupt his self-financed film studio on its first film. And you know what? It really couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. Its poor performance led to the film not being preserved, and it's now considered a lost film, with only the soundtrack surviving. August 10th, one of the first examples of wartime propaganda filmmaking, The Battle of Somme, is released in Britain and viewed over 20 million times. On October 17th, A Daughter of the Gods is released, and Annette Kellerman performs the first nude scene in by a major star. Yeah, one of those things. Though this was not the first nude scene overall, as The Inspiration premiered the year previously, and kinetoscopes honestly were known for screening, strip teases. I mean, go figure. On September 5th, D.W. Griffith releases Intolerance as a counter-argument to his critics for their response to Birth of a Nation. This film was estimated to cost $2.3 million, the most expensive movie at this time, and initially a commercial disappointment, although some people have disputed that fact. The three highest grossing films of 1916 were at number 3, Joan the Woman, with a rough estimate of $605,000. Intolerance was at number 2, somewhere around $1 million, and 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea was at number 1, with around $8 million. Now, I'll be covering this film in one of my film flashbacks, so if it is out, you can find it in the link down below. And if it isn't, just kind of keep your eye out for it. Keep in mind these are loose numbers. We're in the early days of cinema, and there wasn't very accurate ticket sales numbers or box office tracking. These figures are going to get more reliable as we move forward. And I guess this brings me to my top picks. Todd's top picks, if you will. Like I said, this category will expand over time, but we're going to try and keep it a little more limited in these early days. As this show develops, I will hopefully have around 5 to 10 choices for you all, with full reviews being available on the channel. But for today, we are back with another D.W. Griffith film, his second epic, Intolerance, Love's Struggle Through the Ages. D.W. Griffith looked to go even bigger and better with his follow-up to the hit film Birth of a Nation. Intolerance became the most expensive movie of all time, with its massive sets and over 3,000 extras. The movie is broken up into 4 segments, exploring different times in history where prejudice led to either downfall or tragedy. Easily the most expensive segment was the Babylon portion, which cost a third of the film's budget and ran about $12,000 a day just to pay the extras for its massive battles and festival sequences. These sequences are truly stunning to watch, even over 100 years later. The walls themselves were, of course, practical set pieces and towered over Sunset Boulevard at 300 feet tall. These are the action sequences that many directors of the time, and probably even directors of modern time, would dream to be able to make. With massive armies of practical actors besieging real walls in red fire and fury. The editing was also revolutionary for its time, with many stories intercut together to fit one theme. With over 50 transitions, many critics of the time decried it, maybe, over the top, as an accomplishment similar to the music pieces of old, like Beethoven's Symphony. Indeed, Intolerance had a delicate balancing act to maintain, with many characters and plot lines happening simultaneously, and each having to progress and climax authentically around the same time frame. 4 storylines tied together by the Eternal Mother rocking the cradle of time. The first story covers the ancient Babylonians and the conflict between Prince Belshazzar and Cyrus of Persia. The fall of Babylon is caused by the conflict between the Babylonian rival religions who worship different gods. Now the second storyline is the story of the French resistance and again, religious intolerance that led to the St. Bartholomew massacre. The third story takes place close to the release of the movie, what we would call the Modern Times storyline. Here we have a crime story where rich capitalists crush a workers' strike, resulting in the members of the marginalized, a young married couple, turning to a life of crime in which they lose everything. The final and shortest of the series is a retelling of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. These stories differ in quality, but they are all reasonably strong, with the best segments being the modern time crime story and, of course, the memorable Babylonian epic. But perhaps the most important part of this movie is not so much what is going on the screen, but rather what is going on in the mind of the auteur filmmaker D.W. Griffith. Contrary to popular belief, Birth of a Nation was a monumental success never before seen in film. But there was a huge uproar against the film, even in 1915. Boycotts were led against the movie and protests against its historical inaccuracies and the blatant racist depictions of African Americans. This criticism has only grown all the harsher with time. And Griffith, I think, actually did take some of it to heart. Just, maybe not in the way people expected. Intolerance is not titled for the intolerance Griffith showed against the African American community, but more so the intolerance that Griffith felt was being brought against him. Because, sure, yeah, he had it hard. Though the themes of the movie on the surface level are timeless, with how hate corrupts and destroys, Griffith truly felt he did nothing wrong with Birth of a Nation, and that he told his truth as passed down by his father, who served as a colonel during the Civil War and lived through the Reconstruction era. It is, of course, a preposterous point of view, but one D.W. Griffith felt strongly about. This film is part of what I like to refer to as the D.W. Griffith self-examination trilogy. It starts with Birth of a Nation and it ends with Broken Blossoms. It is his resistance to the overwhelming critique history has brought against him. Griffith believed this film supported his claims. It was made for that purpose, but time itself has betrayed him. And like a poor high school debater who accidentally points out data to disprove his own side, the movie itself often highlights people's complete unwillingness to recognize that they are stuck in a rut of their own biases. This is a man who argued himself into a corner with his own movie, and we cannot say if in the process of filming he ever recognized the hypocrisy illuminated by his own 4 narratives. Unlike Birth of a Nation, which comes with a lot of racism and politics of the era, Intolerance is unburdened of that troublesome baggage. Here, we have a true self-examination by a very flawed auteur, a man who thought he had made a case for himself and in doing so perhaps proved his critics more right than any fiery letter to the editor could have ever hoped to achieve. Intolerance is a real masterpiece of the silent era. And that is it for this episode of The Journey Through Cinema. Once again, thank you any and all for joining me, and let me know if you have any feedback for this series, something you may want to see. Anyways, until next time, keep those reels a-turning.